In a certain house, a boy named Kimihito Kurusu turns off his alarm, groggily trying to wake up. However, he finds himself wrapped up tightly by Miia, a lamia half-woman, half-snake, crushing him in her sleep as she seeks warmth, making it hard for him to escape. After escaping, Kimihito draws a warm bath for Miia to help her warm up. 3 years ago, a law was passed called the Interspecies Exchange Bill. This law allowed humans to interact with semi-human species, which the government had previously kept hidden. Since then, the semi-human species have been integrated into human society through cultural exchange programs without major incidents. While Kimihito prepares breakfast, he is surprised by the sudden appearance of Ms. Smith, an interspecies exchange coordinator. Smith, who is responsible for ensuring that caretakers follow the rules, arrives to check in on Kimihito and Miia. She reminds him that caretakers are strictly prohibited from engaging in any intimate activities with the semi-human species, particularly sex, as it would violate the exchange program's guidelines. Anyone who harms or breaks the purity of a semi-human is subject to severe punishment, and the offender could face arrest, while the semi-human would be deported. Smith informs Kimihito that she had initially left Miia at his place for a temporary stay, but Miia has since grown fond of him. Now that Miia is enjoying her time, Smith advises Kimihito to study the law and warns him again about the importance of controlling his desires, as semi-humans like Miia are often more passionate than humans. Engaging in a relationship could cause a diplomatic incident. Just then, Miia enters the room and angrily yells at Smith for threatening Kimihito. After Smith leaves, Miia casually dismisses the prohibitory rules, confessing to Kimihito that she fell in love with him the day they met. While others feared her for being a lamia, Kimihito accepted her and allowed her to stay. Overcome with emotion, Miia wraps her snake-like tail around him and tries to get closer, only to accidentally dislocate his shoulder. The following day, Ms. Smith visits again and reminds Kimihito that, as Mia's host, it's his responsibility to show her around town and keep her company at all times. The law requires that the semi-human species and their caretakers be together everywhere they go. Kimihito reluctantly agrees, and he and Miia spend the day exploring the town. They have lunch together, play arcade games, and even visit a lingerie shop, much to Kimihito's embarrassment. Afterwards, they run into a racist couple who harass Miia. Angered, Miia nearly attacks them, but Kimihito intervenes, reminding her that hurting humans would get her deported. Onlookers start taking photos of Miia and Kimihito, forcing the two to flee. They eventually hide in a love hotel, where Miia opens up about her fears that humans only pretend to accept her kind because of the law. In a vulnerable moment, Miia takes off her robe and asks Kimihito to make love to her, but he hesitates. Before anything can happen, they are ambushed by the Interspecies Exchange Security Squad, who had tracked them down after people posted pictures of Miia on social media. Fortunately, Ms. Smith recognizes them and fixes the situation. As they leave the hotel, they once again encounter the same racist couple who mocked Miia earlier. This time, however, Kimihito punches them in defense of Miia. Back at home, Kimihito tells Miia that he will always view her as a girl first and not lamia. Overjoyed, Miia resumes her advances on Kimihito, only for them to be interrupted by Smith. The next day, a harpy named Papi, half-woman, half-eagle, kidnaps Kimihito and brings him to a park. Papi explains that she's not allowed to go outside until she memorizes the interspecies exchange law, which is why she doesn't have a host family yet. She admits to having run away multiple times before but was never caught. This time, however, her coordinator warned her that she would be deported if she ran away again. Kimihito tries to comfort her, and Papi begins to cry. He gives her an ice cream to cheer her up, but the clumsy harpy spills it all over herself. Without hesitation, Papi undresses in the park to clean herself off by a nearby fountain. Kimihito, realizing that Papi doesn't understand human customs, grows nervous as a crowd begins to gather. As Papi playfully drags Kimihito into the fountain with her, Miia suddenly arrives, furious that Papi took her darling without permission. The two begin bickering over Kimihito, causing an even bigger scene. Amid their argument, the crowd notices a young girl hanging from a tree branch, terrified and unable to climb down. Acting quickly, Miia slithers up the tree to rescue her, but the girl panics and slips. As she's about to fall, Papi flies up and catches her in midair. However, Papi's wings are wet, preventing her from landing properly. Kimihito rushes to help her, and together they safely rescue the girl, drawing cheers from the crowd for the heroic actions. A police officer arrives and inquires about Papi's host family. Since Papi doesn't have an official host, Kimihito claims he is the host for both Miia and Papi. Just as the officer asks for the necessary paperwork, Ms. Smith shows up and presents the documents. Smith reveals that she was on her way to make the harpy live with him. This news makes Papi ecstatic, and she affectionately addresses Kimihito as her master. Later that day, Papi asks Kimihito to help her bathe, but before he can respond, Miia steps in. She pushes Kimihito aside, insisting on bathing Papi herself. That night, both Miia and Papi sleep together in Kimihito's bed, leaving him somewhat relieved that Miia isn't clinging to him for once. The next morning, while Kimihito is returning home from the grocery store, he is suddenly stopped by a tall, elegant centaur named Centorea, a proud member of the centaur race. She approaches Kimihito and, with great dignity, asks if he is destined to become her master. Confused, Kimihito calls Ms. Smith, who explains that centaurs have a tradition of finding their own masters, and since Smith is off duty, she leaves Kimihito to take care of Centorea for the day. While walking together, a thief on a motorcycle speeds by and snatches a woman's purse. Without hesitation, Centorea goes after the thief with Kimihito clinging to her. During the chase, Kimihito accidentally grabs her chest, unbuttoning her shirt. Embarrassed, Centorea veers off into a corner, but before she can confront him about the mishap, the thief reappears. The thief attempts to strike Centorea with a sword she had dropped during the chase. Kimihito, without thinking, leaps in front of her and takes the blow. Fortunately, the sword is a replica, leaving Kimihito unharmed. Ms. Smith later explains that riding a centaur is a deeply intimate act, reserved only for a centaur's chosen master. Kimihito apologizes to Centorea, but she immediately forgives him, touched by his bravery and selflessness. Centorea swears her loyalty to Kimihito and officially acknowledges him as her master. Surprisingly, Kimihito accepts, and Centorea joins his household, much to Miia and Papi's surprise. The next day, Kimihito asks Centorea to fill out a homestay application, while Miia takes the responsibility of teaching Papi about the interspecies exchange law. Miia and Centorea soon get into an argument over Kimihito, each vying for his attention. Meanwhile, Kimihito takes Papi for a bath, where she starts getting a bit too close to Kimihito, trying to get intimate with him. Before things can escalate, Centorea bursts in, stopping Papi's advances. In a knightly manner, she insists on protecting Kimihito and even lets him ride on her back as she takes him to a nearby park. Centorea explains she is bound by loyalty and honor to serve her chosen master. Kimihito, however, gently reminds her that part of the interspecies exchange program is about learning human culture and that she should take this chance to experience new things. When Kimihito asks if there's anything she wants to try, Centorea sees a couple holding hands nearby and shyly asks if they can do the same. Kimihito obliges and holds her hand. The moment is short-lived as Miia and Papi soon arrive at the park and, upon seeing Kimihito with Centorea, begin fighting with her for monopolizing his attention. Just as things escalate into chaos, Ms. Smith, who happens to be driving by, notices the girls fighting and, fed up with their antics, pulls out a tranquilizer gun to stop them. However, Kimihito, not wanting to see the girls get hurt, steps in the way and ends up being tranquilized instead. Back at home, the girls feel guilty for causing so much trouble and apologize to Kimihito, promising to behave and not cause him any more stress. To their surprise, Kimihito isn't mad at them. Instead, he blames Smith for carelessly throwing them together without considering how different they are. Ms. Smith announces that there are proposed changes to the interspecies exchange bill. She reveals that as part of the changes, she wants Kimihito to marry one of the girls as a test case for interspecies marriages. Shocked by this sudden announcement, Kimihito yells at Smith, frustrated by her habit of forcing decisions on him without warning. Later that night, Miia and Papi, believing that they will be the ones to marry Kimihito, try to force him into mating with them. Just as things start to get out of hand, Centorea bursts into the room, pushing the other girls away. She explains that it's a full moon night, which is causing their instincts to take over. She guesses that after the marriage proposal came up, Miia and Papi must have lost control of their emotions. However, not long after explaining this, Centorea herself begins acting on her instincts as well. Terrified and overwhelmed, Kimihito tries to escape the aroused girls by locking himself in the kitchen. He calls Ms. Smith, angrily demanding why she didn't warn him about the full moon's effect on the girls. However, before he can get a proper answer, the girls break through the door and manage to corner him. In the struggle to defend himself, Kimihito ends up falling and hurting himself. The following morning, Kimihito gathers the girls and tells them that he will date all three of them as potential marriage partners. The girls get excited and look forward to marrying him. While waiting for dinner, Miia opens a pot on the stove only to be attacked by a mysterious slime. Centorea explains that slimes are a species still unrecognized by human society, making this encounter particularly unusual. Later, the same slime reappears and attempts to attack Kimihito. Acting quickly, Centorea steps in and uses her sword to slice through it. However, the slime bursts, splattering all over Kimihito and Centorea, covering them in its sticky substance. Afterward, Kimihito and Centorea head for a bath to wash off the slime. Centorea theorizes that the slime must have been looking for water, as it was first found in the water pot and later appeared in the sink. Suddenly, the slime is spotted again, this time on the ceiling. Before Centorea can attack, it transforms into a humanoid slime woman. She wraps herself around Kimihito, attempting to bathe him by hugging him tightly, nearly suffocating him in the process. In desperation, Kimihito pushes her into the bathtub. Upon contact with the water, the slime dissolves into a formless mass. As Kimihito and the others plan to inform Ms. Smith about the slime woman, she reappears and bursts, covering everyone in slime once again. While Miia and Centorea express their distaste for the slimy intruder, Papi takes a liking to her and even names her Sue. Since Sue's body composition is made of slime, wearing clothes becomes impossible as they immediately get soaked. To solve the problem, Kimihito gives her a raincoat. Later, Kimihito, Miia, and Centorea debate what to do with Sue. They fear that if they hand her over to Ms. Smith, the government might place her under prohibitory supervision or worse, imprison her as an illegal immigrant. Just as they are discussing the situation, Papi suddenly picks up Sue and flies out of the window. Kimihito immediately gives chase. A little farther away, Sue sees a river and, in a panic, struggles before falling to the ground. Luckily, Kimihito arrives in time to catch her. Realizing that Sue had previously melted when she fell into the bathtub, Kimihito deduces that she is terrified of water. Papi, worried that Kimihito might send Sue to prison, explains why she ran off. Before they can resolve the situation, a group of children approaches, asking Papi to play with them. It is revealed that Papi has been sneaking off to the park every day to play with the children. While Papi entertains the kids, Sue absorbs water from the river through her tentacles. Unlike when she was submerged in the bathtub, this gradual absorption caused her to grow into a giant slime woman. Kimihito, observing Sue playing with the children alongside Papi, realizes that Sue just wants to have fun and isn't inherently dangerous. Suddenly, one of the children runs into the street and is nearly hit by a truck driven by the racist couple from a previous incident. Sue, thinking quickly, saves the child but falls off a bridge in the process. Luckily, Kimihito gets under her with the crashed truck before she falls into the water. After this, Kimihito decides to let Sue stay at his house. They return home together, only to find Ms. Smith waiting for them. Miia informs everyone that they need to hide Sue from the interspecies exchange security squad. As the girls begin devising a strategy to conceal Sue, the unexpected happens. The squad's construction crew arrives at their door, preparing to remodel Kimihito's house. In the commotion, the girls sneak out with Sue, but they accidentally leave Kimihito behind. Suddenly, they notice a group of security forces and are forced to hide in the bushes by the side of the road. Papi accidentally spills the water they had brought for Sue. Seeing the water on Papi's body, the dehydrated Sue loses control and begins licking the water off Papi. Despite Papi's attempts to stop her, Sue continues, absorbing the water from her body. Meanwhile, Kimihito is left confused as the security officers barge into his home, remodeling it for another half-human resident. Realizing the girls are missing, he rushes out onto the streets to search for them. He comes across a girl in a wheelchair who is uncontrollably rolling downhill, heading toward a dangerous collision with a metal pole. Kimihito quickly intervenes, saving her from serious injury. The girl introduces herself as Mero, and after helping her get to safety, Kimihito explains that he is the host to several monster girls. Inside the bush, Miia and Centorea are drenched with sweat from hiding for too long. Their wet bodies attract Sue, who, in her dehydrated state, begins assaulting them by absorbing the moisture from their skin. As Sue continues, loud rumbling sounds are heard from behind the bushes, and Centorea nearly yelps in surprise. only to have Miia cover her mouth to keep her quiet. Hearing the noise, Kimihito approaches with Mero in tow. When he arrives at the scene, he finds Sue sucking water out of Maia's body. Sue then spots Mero and rushes to absorb water from her as well. However, Kimihito manages to trap Sue in a plastic bag. Arriving home, they thank Smith for building a room for Sue. However, she reveals that the room is not for Sue but for Mero, who is a mermaid, and that Kimihito is now her new host. Later on, Miia accidentally breaks Mero's wheelchair, leaving Kimihito no choice but to carry the mermaid around the house. Seeing this, Miia grows increasingly envious, assuming Mero is trying to seduce Kimihito. Desperate to prevent what she believes is Mero's attempt to lure him away, Miia enlists the help of Centorea and Papi, but her efforts prove fruitless. Shortly after, when Kimihito knocks Mero into the pool to save her from a once again dehydrated Sue. Misinterpreting the situation, Miia believes Mero is making a romantic move on Kimihito. Fueled by jealousy, Miia jumps into the pool herself in an attempt to seduce Kimihito, but the cold water weakens her, nearly causing her to drown. Kimihito quickly comes to her rescue, pulling her back to the surface. Later, after discovering the truth that Mero is not interested in Kimihito, Miia finally decides to relax. She hugs Mero tightly and accepts her request to take a bath together. During their bath, Mero reveals that she is not interested in stealing Kimihito's affection. Instead, she desires a tragic love story, similar to the tale of the Little Mermaid. She reassures Miia that she has no plans to interfere with her relationship with Kimihito, but rather hopes for Maia's happiness with him. As the two are talking, Centorea and Papi overhear them and believe that the two are plotting. Miia, later, tries her hand at cooking different dishes. Meanwhile, Kimihito can't help but imagine sensual scenarios involving Miia. Unfortunately, while preparing the food, Miia accidentally burns her hands. Concerned, Kimihito goes to her room to comfort her, reassuring her that mistakes are normal, especially when learning new things. During this, Kimihito notices that Miia is shedding her skin, something she's struggling to do with her bandaged hands. Seeing her discomfort, Kimihito offers to help. As he begins removing the shed skin, Miia becomes overwhelmed by the sensation of his touch. She starts moaning with every move Kimihito makes. Things take an unexpected turn when he attempts to shed the belly of her snake body. He accidentally touches a sensitive spot and she reflexively knocks him unconscious. Feeling guilty, Miia later tries to make it up to him by preparing dinner, but her dishes turn out to be inedible as she didn't follow a cookbook. Later, Kimihito returns home from the supermarket, only to be immediately approached by Sue, who clings to him. Just then, Papi calls out to Kimihito, announcing that she's about to lay an egg. Before Kimihito can explain what's happening, the other girls misinterpret the situation and assume Kimihito is responsible for the egg. Armed with weapons, they start attacking him. Kimihito quickly explains that it's normal for harpies like Papi to lay eggs and says that it is unfertilized. At that moment, Kiseiji, a nosy news reporter, shows up at their residence, claiming to be filming a documentary on the interspecies exchange. However, throughout his visit, he creates several problems, from photographing Mero when her swimsuit slips to groping Centorea when she mentions she doesn't wear a bra. He even steals Maia's shed skin, all while focusing his camera on inappropriate shots of the girls and promising to edit them later. The girls protest, but Kiseiji doesn't listen. Mero then arrives to inform everyone that Papi is about to lay her egg. Excited by the prospect, Kiseiji insists on filming the process, despite the group's objections. He even coerces Kimihito into assisting Papi, all while capturing the event in an invasive manner. Fortunately, Sue steps in by reading Kiseiji's mind, revealing his true intention. He plans to sell the egg and the uncensored footage for a large sum of money. Furious at this revelation, the group bands together to stop him. Kimihito cleverly uses a store-bought egg to distract Kiseiji and uses the opportunity to punch him unconscious. They retrieve Maia's shed skin and the recording tapes before throwing Kiseiji out of the house. Papi is finally able to lay her egg in peace, and she stores it safely in the fridge. Unfortunately, when Miia cooks again, she accidentally uses Papi's egg in one of her dishes, leaving everyone in shock. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kiseiji can be seen speaking to a spider-like creature with a half-human body named Arachne. He is berating at her for building webs everywhere. She then wraps him up in thread and states that she is interested in his story about Kimihito. A group of armed orcs from the Orc Pioneer Foundation storm into a doujinshi shop and take a group of humans hostage. Their bizarre demand is for an increase in the amount of orc-related content in erotic manga titles. It turns out that even monsters in this world have a particular fondness for adult content. At the police station, the officers are at a loss for how to handle the situation. Due to the interspecies exchange bill, they are prohibited from using force against the orcs. Just then, Smith arrives and assures the police chief that she has a solution to the problem. Desperate for help, the chief agrees to let Smith take charge. Meanwhile, inside the shop, the orcs use their keen sense of smell to detect a female spy attempting to sneak inside. They shoot her multiple times, seemingly killing her. They also discover another woman hiding in the shop and bring her before their leader. The orc leader recognizes her as a character from his favorite manga and expresses his desire to be intimate with her. However, before anything can happen, the woman rushes to the window, pulls down the curtain, and exposes the shop's interior to the outside. This gives Monako, a one-eyed Cyclops monster girl, the perfect opportunity to snipe the orcs' weapons from a distance of over a kilometer. The orcs are stunned by Monako's incredible aim. At the same time, Tyanitia, a robot girl, enters the building to free the hostages. The supposedly dead spy also awakens, revealing herself to be Zombina, a zombie monster girl. The orc leader, still holding the second woman hostage, threatens to kill her. However, the woman reveals herself as Doppel, a shapeshifter, and transforms into a seductive figure, rendering the orc leader helpless. With the orcs defeated and captured, Smith arrives at the scene and introduces the group of monster girls as part of an elite task force called MON. Later, the sleazy reporter Kasagi contacts MON for help. They arrive to arrest Arachne, and Monako attempts to shoot her but fails, allowing Arachne to escape. Back at Kimihito's house, Papi and Sue are bringing in groceries when the girls realize that Kimihito is missing. Smith and the others quickly deduce that Arachnora has likely abducted Kimihito, mistakenly believing that he destroyed a monster's egg. Meanwhile, Kimihito awakens, shackled and hanging upside down in a desolate warehouse. The Arachne introduces herself as Arachnora and begins to torment him. She is surprised when Kimihito shows no signs of disgust toward her spider lower half, which most humans would find repulsive. Instead, Kimihito is captivated by her mesmerizing upper body and struggles to control his emotions as she flirts with him. Just then, Smith and the police arrive outside the warehouse, announcing that whoever attacked Kasagi must surrender. Hearing this, Kimihito assumes they are there to arrest him for harming Kasagi, but Arachnora explains that she had a previous host who mistreated her, which is why she ran away. Finally, Arachnora surrenders herself to the authorities, and Smith apologizes for not providing her with a proper host in the first place. Surprisingly, Arachnora begins to develop feelings for Kimihito. With the situation resolved, Smith decides to move Arachnora into Kimihito's home, adding yet another resident to his ever-growing and chaotic household. Arachnora begins to settle into the Kurusu household. However, Miia and Centorea, in particular, are suspicious of her intentions, unlike Papi, Sue, and Mero, who are more welcoming. Arachnora, true to her flirtatious nature, tries to get close to Kimihito, causing jealousy and frustration for Miia. Desperate to get Arachnora away from him, Miia seeks help from the others to attack her, but no one offers support. Centorea, however, takes a more protective approach, staying close to Kimihito and acting as his self-appointed guard against Arachnora's advances. Later that night, Arachnora sneaks into Kimihito's room and tries to seduce him, only for Centorea to intervene just in time. She quickly puts Kimihito on her back and gallops off into the night. As they run through the streets, onlookers are shocked by the sight of a centaur with a human man on her back. However, their escape is cut short when they are confronted by the same racist man from the earlier incident and his gang. The thugs, seeing Centorea's vulnerable state, attempt to molest her, knowing she can't fight back due to the restrictions of the interspecies law. Just as the situation escalates, Arachnora arrives on the scene. Using her webbing powers, she swiftly immobilizes all the thugs, wrapping them in her threads and leaving them helpless. After the rescue, Arachnora once again flirts with Kimihito, drawing closer to him. Centorea, still protective, pulls Kimihito back and, in a moment of emotion, confesses her true feelings for him. She also admits her dislike for Arachnora, accusing her of trying to steal Kimihito away. To her surprise, Arachnora reveals that her actions were meant to push Centorea into confessing her own feelings. With this revelation, Centorea realizes that Arachnora isn't as untrustworthy as she thought, and the two come to an understanding. They return home with Kimihito. Later, Kimihito catches a severe cold. The girls rush to his aid, each trying different methods to help him recover. But their efforts are interrupted by Miss Smith, who suddenly arrives and quarantines Kimihito in his room, claiming it might be a contagious outbreak. Smith offers to take care of him herself, an obvious ploy to ditch her mountain of paperwork. She promptly falls asleep. Realizing they need to take matters into their own hands, the girls come up with a plan. Centorea deduces that Sue, being a slime, is the only one who can interact with Kimihito without getting sick. The girls then train Sue, teaching her various techniques, including some sensual moves, to keep Kimihito warm and help him recover. Sue follows their instructions, using her telepathic abilities to better understand his condition. She learns that Kimihito caught his cold while searching for her in the rain, which makes her feel responsible for his illness. She further finds out that he's also fatigued, dehydrated, and experiencing throat pain. Sue, determined to help, nurses Kimihito throughout the night, making him drink water from her breasts. Her efforts are successful, and by morning, Kimihito wakes up fully recovered. Overjoyed, the other girls rush into his room, relieved that their beloved master is feeling better. Meanwhile, Miss Smith winds up catching his cold. Smith calls up the MON for help. Unwilling to help her, they use the same pandemic excuse she made earlier. Kimihito and Ms. Smith find themselves sitting in a maid cafe, casually ordering coffee. To the monster girls, it appears suspiciously like a date. They immediately start chasing after them, eager to uncover the truth. Despite their best efforts, the girls can't figure it out, so they decide to eavesdrop on their conversation. Mero, disguised as one of the cafe's maids with Sue acting as her uniform, tries to sneak closer to listen in. But when she hides behind a wooden post and calls the other girls to report the situation, Sue begins moving uncontrollably, causing a commotion. Meanwhile, Ms. Smith decides to take Kimihito to a more private location and leaves the cafe. Next, the pair heads to an arcade, where Papi is already waiting, disguised as a cosplayer with Sue once again acting as part of her costume. However, things go wrong when Papi tries to call the other girls for backup, and her phone slips into her costume, getting stuck between her chest. While Papi struggles to retrieve the phone, she accidentally draws attention, creating a scene and forcing Kimihito and Miss Smith to leave again. Finally, Miia follows Kimihito and Miss Smith to a love hotel, where she meets up with Ragnara, who has been trailing them all along using her web strings. Ragnara has a plan to sneak into their room, take inappropriate photos, and use them to manipulate the pair for her own advantage. However, before she can enact her scheme, Miia intervenes, and the two get into a fight. The MON squad arrives just in time to apprehend them both. Ms. Smith then reveals that the entire date was just a ruse. Kimihito had received a threatening letter from someone going by the name D, and Smith was using the outing as a way to draw the culprit out into the open. Since they failed to do so, Smith asks all the girls to go on individual dates with Kimihito. The first date goes to Miia, though Mero, much to Maia's frustration, tags along with them. The trio heads to an aquarium, where Mero, treated like royalty due to her mermaid heritage, is showered with attention. She gives Kimihito and Miia VIP passes and encourages them to enjoy the aquarium together. The two begin exploring, but their attention is soon drawn to Mero's impressive dolphin performance. Kimihito is so captivated by Mero's graceful display that Miia storms off, feeling neglected and thinking that Kimihito is more interested in Mero than in her. While walking away, Miia encounters Draco, a reptilian liminal with a dragon-like appearance. Draco, impressed by Maia's beauty, takes her out on a boat, but things quickly take a dark turn. In the middle of a pond, Draco attempts to force himself on Miia. She cries for help, and just before anything terrible happens, Kimihito and Mero arrive to rescue her. In the process, Mero unintentionally reveals that Draco is, in fact, female. While Draco did not write the letter, Ms. Smith arrests her for being out without her host family. Kimihito's second date is with Papi and Sue, and it takes place in a forest, where they plan to enjoy an outdoor barbecue in a wooded area where industrial nutrient waste was once dumped with Zambina, who was supposed to be shadowing them, freeloading on the cooking meat. Suddenly, a huge tree-like creature, a kaiju, begins approaching them, causing loud thumping noises that shake the ground. Seeing the enormous figure, Kimihito tries to flee, carrying Papi and Sue with him. However, the tree kaiju, identified by Papi as Ki, a dryad she once rescued but completely forgot about, extends its branches and captures Papi. Kimihito keeps running with Sue in his arms, but soon he too is seized by Ki. Ki, who has been poisoned by the illegally dumped waste, is on a rampage with a grudge against all humans and stomps Zambina into the ground. Sue, who fell into the industrial waste, grows to a giant size and battles Ki to save Kimihito and Papi. Sue reveals that the only way to stop Ki is to extract the industrial waste that has tainted her body. Papi tries to do this by sucking the waste from Ki's breasts, but she is quickly restrained by one of Ki's branches. Kimihito is then asked to help and, after Sue immobilizes Ki, he manages to draw out the waste, gradually calming the enraged dryad. Finally, Ki is restored to her normal size and is brought before Ms. Smith, who checks her handwriting and clears her from being the mysterious D as she can't write. Ms. Smith offers Ki a new host family, but Ki decides to remain in the forest as long as Papi and Sue promise to visit her regularly. Kimihito's third date is with Centorea. To everyone's surprise, Centorea appears in full body armor, ready to protect Kimihito from any potential threats, taking her role as his knight very seriously. Manako, a member of the Moen squad, is tasked with monitoring their date but is flustered by Centorea's intense appearance. However, things take a mischievous turn when Lilith, a demon who looks like a child but is actually an adult who enjoys playing pranks. Realizing that her heavy armor might be too much for the date, Centorea changes into her regular attire and takes Kimihito on a picnic. She unpacks the dishes she has prepared for him, which are all vegetarian. Despite Kimihito disliking the food, he pretends to enjoy it to make Centorea happy. But soon, Ragnaros shows up and remarks that the food lacks flavor, adding to Centorea's growing sense of inadequacy as Kimihito's servant. Feeling down, Centorea wanders off, only to encounter Lilith, who uses her hypnotic powers to teach Centorea ways to seduce Kimihito. Under Lilith's influence, Centorea returns to Kimihito, lays him on the ground, and begins rubbing her body against his, trying to act more boldly. Lilith, hiding behind a bush, is thoroughly entertained by the scene. Suddenly, a large, angry wild boar charges toward Lilith, scaring her. Kimihito notices this and heroically throws his shirt over the boar's eyes, blinding it temporarily, and Centorea subdues it. Afterward, Kimihito reassures Centorea that he has always trusted her and values her as the most loyal of all the girls. Meanwhile, Lilith, who tried her tricks on Ragnaros, who had been secretly keeping an eye on Kimihito and Centorea, is caught and severely punished by Arachne, who learns that Lilith is not D either. Back at Kimihito's residence, Centorea regains her confidence and takes charge of preparing the salad for everyone and implementing strict rules on others. The next morning, the Moen members, except for Doppel, who remains uninterested, decide to take matters into their own hands and have Kimihito date each of them in one day. When Kimihito inquires about why they are doing so, they reply that they are frustrated with their failure to uncover the identity of D, who sent a second, more menacing letter. Tainitia, the robot monster girl, takes him on the first date, dragging him to several stores to try on dresses. However, due to her immense size, even the largest clothing doesn't fit her properly. Kimihito tries to help her squeeze into one of the dresses, but in the process, it tears, exposing her. Tainitia is mortified and becomes terribly upset, feeling awkward about her size. Next, Zambina leads Kimihito to a movie theater to watch a zombie film. During the movie, Zambina's hand falls off by accident, and Kimihito kindly sews it back on, showing the same care and compassion he always does, treating her like a human rather than a monster. Zambina, touched by his kind gesture, becomes fond of him but can't help teasing him by purposefully detaching parts of her body for him to fix, eventually even detaching a breast and asking him to sew it back on, much to Kimihito's embarrassment. Finally, Manako, the one-eyed monster girl, takes Kimihito on the last date of the day. Unlike the others, Manako is visibly self-conscious, especially while walking in public. She requests they go somewhere quiet and out of sight, and Kimihito agrees. Throughout the date, Manako remains flustered whenever Kimihito makes eye contact with her. The date is interrupted by Manako spotting a shadowy figure following them. The three Moen girls team up to apprehend the stalker. To everyone's shock, it turns out that D is Doppel, who sent the first letter as a prank. Just as they think the mystery is solved, a second, more sinister figure appears. A woman with blue skin, dressed in black, and wielding a scythe. She presses the scythe against Kimihito's throat, revealing that she was responsible for the second letter. Later that evening, Kimihito brings home a new, headless girl. The girls are horrified to see a headless body in the house, especially Miia. Kimihito decides to assist the girl in finding her missing head. They search the nearby park, and after a brief search, They locate the head, which starts speaking and admits that it was she who wrote the second letter. The head, now in Kimihito's hands, requests to be placed back on her body. As Kimihito tries to comply, the policeman discovers them but panics when he sees Kimihito clutching the head. Meanwhile, back at Kimihito's home, Ragnar is toying with the headless body of the girl, making the disembodied head feel something bizarre. Thanks to some unexpected and unintentional help from Papi, the gang gets away and returns home with the head. Once Kimihito reattaches the head to the body, the girl introduces herself as Dullahan, a grim reaper-like spirit of death. She reveals that she has come to claim Kimihito's soul because, according to her, he is close to dying. All the girls are shocked to hear this, and they are worried for Kimihito. The monster girls devise a plan to take him as far away from the dullahan as possible to protect him. First, Papi grabs Kimihito with her legs and flies into the sky. As they soar, Kimihito unintentionally touches her private parts, causing Papi to feel a strange sensation. She loses focus, crashes into a large advertising board, and they fall toward the ground. Thankfully, Sue, the slime girl, cushions their fall, preventing any serious injuries. Next, Centorea takes her turn to carry Kimihito. However, as they ride, Centorea's imagination starts to run wild with romantic visions of her spending intimate time with Kimihito, causing her to lose concentration and stumble, injuring him slightly. Mero, the mermaid, also tries to save Kimihito, but her attempt is similarly disastrous, as she too becomes distracted by her feelings for him. After these failed rescue attempts, Ragnar, the Arachne, surprisingly agrees with Dullahan, claiming that if she really is the Reaper of Souls, there is nothing they can do to prevent Kimihito from dying. This causes Miia to break down emotionally. She declares that if Kimihito is truly going to die, she will die alongside him because she loves him too much to live without him. Kimihito, annoyed by the chaos, decides to confront Dullahan and stop running away from his supposed impending death. But when he stands up to her, to everyone's surprise, nothing happens. No death, no grim fate. Everything remains perfectly normal. Back at Kimihito's residence, Ms. Smith arrives and reveals that Dullahan's name is Lala. She explains that Lala is not a Reaper of Souls after all. Smith also reveals that Lala has run away from several previous host families because no one there was actually dying, which Lala felt defeated the purpose of her existence. Lala, seeing Kimihito's caring nature and feeling comfortable in his home, requests to stay with him and the other girls. To everyone's surprise, Ms. Smith agrees and officially assigns Kimihito as Lala's host. Kimihito, realizing that Lala's eccentric behavior stems from her late-stage 8th grader syndrome, is able to see through her lies, recalling that he himself went through a similar phase when he was younger. Later, Miia tries to cook for the household but fails miserably, as usual. Kimihito realizes that the food supplies are running low, and due to the daily demands of feeding so many girls, he is running into serious financial trouble. To remedy the situation, Kimihito decides to go grocery shopping, bringing Centorea, Papi, Mero, and Sue along with him, intending to stick to a strict budget. When they arrive at the grocery store, the merchants are initially startled by the sight of the monster girls. However, Mero charms the fish vendor by praising the quality of his products, and he rewards her by gifting one of the largest fish in the shop. Similarly, Centorea is given a rare, fresh carrot by a vegetable merchant who is impressed by her reaction when she tastes it. He ends up offering her an entire basket full of carrots. Meanwhile, Sue and Papi entertain the children in the market, earning goodwill from the local merchants. Thanks to their charm and positive interactions, Kimihito and the girls manage to buy plenty of food at a lower price than expected. After sending Centorea, Papi, and Mero home, Tio obtains some extra vegetables. Kimihito and Sue visit Ki. He admits she has no knowledge of which plants are edible and lets them search on their own. Fortunately, Sue's unique ability to identify edible and toxic plants by tasting them proves invaluable, and together they gather enough vegetables to last the household. On the way back home, Draco attacks Kimihito, but Sue defends him with the poison she absorbed from the plant tasting. Back at the house, Kimihito prepares a meal for everyone, but just as supper is ready, Ms. Smith and the Moan squad show up unexpectedly, joining the feast and fully depleting the food supply once more. Kimihito is left distraught over how quickly the food ran out, but Smith reassures him that the interspecies program will cover the costs of feeding all the girls in the household. In the end, Kimihito asks Ms. Smith why she didn't inform him about this earlier. With a sheepish grin, Smith replies, "I forgot."
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time, take care.